round.
Today's Wednesday, it's the 31st of May. It's the last day. We've got Luna with us now, and we're in Somerset. So we've come today to the Fleet Air Arm Museum. We're going to see lots of aeroplanes and helicopters and all sorts of things that go in the sky or maybe even in the water. So let's have some fun. So this is the first hall that we come to. This is hall number 1, and we're just looking down upon it. We're going to get a little bit closer in a moment and be able to see the aircraft close up. So we're just going to walk around the outside. Get a bit of a different angle here, but we will get very close to it when we go down. Displays all these sort of things that do fascinate me. This is a 120 horsepower 6-cylinder new engine which dates from 1914, which was very green there. Sometimes the best views are from above. In 1914, the Royal Naval Air Station was the new branch of the Navy, and it worked with the latest technology at the time and actively recruited men with engineering backgrounds in order to maintain the aircraft. Many of the recruits came from the motor industry and went to the RNAS, the Royal Naval Air Station, and they used their knowledge and skills to adapt the vehicles into armoured cars. So that's what we're actually looking at here. The Royal Naval Armoured Car Division used the RNAS depot at Wormwood Scrubs in London and started adapting and commandeering motor car chassis. These were predominantly Rolls-Royce. They obviously had taste. The Talbot, Wolseley, and later on the Lanchester. All the aeroplanes were little more than a few sticks and bits of string and an engine, but they flew. And look at that there for a rotary engine in the middle of that, and the fuel tanks behind it. Of course, aircraft carriers didn't exist, so to put an aeroplane on a ship, how did you launch it? There's a novel idea. You put a runway at the end of the gun. So along the barrel of the gun, and hopefully it was long enough for the biplane to take off. You can turn it around there. I don't think it's ever going to take off in there. This is a short S184, and just look at the size of the engine there. It's a wonder all that weight had managed ever to get off the ground. Two-seater. Which was very common amongst early aircraft, these rotary engines. This one has a total of 9 cylinders. What does it look like on the inside? How does it work? Well, here we've got a model which illustrates what's going on inside and where the piston's moving. And this is interesting because this is going round in a strange way. That's not the centre. Referred to as the Jabberwock. And this is actually one of the Sopwith planes, the Sopwith Baby. Tommy Sopwith, of course, had quite something to do with the Mallorca, so he did have something to do with the building of Puerto Portales. I need to check my details on that, but certainly a story I've read or heard somewhere along the line. Going to move around now. Seaplanes, well, we see quite a few of those in Mallorca, and there is talk of actually starting a new seaplane, an actual commercial flight, probably from the Bay of Pollença. Whether it'll ever get off the ground or off the sea, I suppose, I don't know. Let's see. Search and rescue. Important part of the Royal Navy is the search and rescue and the range of different helicopters that they use for that. We're at Yeovilton, the airbase in Yeovilton, and that's where the Fleet Air Arm Museum is. And this is a Westland Wessex, and the Westland factory was in Yeovil, which is just down the road. No longer called Westland, it was bought out by an Italian company, so it's now referred to as Leonardo's. The one involved with the Falkland War. So this is one that was actually down in the Falklands, another Westland Wessex. And this is a Sea King adapted for search and rescue. And this one is also part of the aircraft that went down to the Falklands. This is one you can actually go in, so up the steps.
No, you can't go in here.
No luxury seating in here. It's a bit of tubular steel and a bit of cloth over there. Here we actually have the cockpit. You can see all of the dials and knobs and switches. Something knows where all these wires go. Is that an egg?
Yeah.
What are you actually doing there?
An egg, but we can't take it out.
I don't think we can. Just back here in the search and rescue area, the important radar.
Well, I'm to go on here.
¿No quieres conducir?
Yeah.
So we're leaving hall 1 now and making our way into hall number 2. Torpedo Mark 15, which was in service during the latter end of the Second World War. It carried a 274 kilo explosive and more powerful than the TNT. It could travel quite a distance at 38 miles an hour, or a little bit less of a distance, going at 46 miles an hour, maybe 50 miles an hour. So this thing's really shifting around. This is a model of HMS Fencer. which served as an aircraft carrier. This was commissioned at the latter end of the Second World War. This submarine is actually U-69. It is affectionately known as the Laughing Cow. And if you look very closely on the conning tower, there is actually a laughing cow. Apparently the commander at the time liked it so much he decided to keep the emblem. This is the fairy Fulmer. So the wings have to be retracted and they're on an aircraft carrier so you can get them below decks. An engineering workshop where the equipment from this workshop is used only by an authorised engineer. And I remember I've used a lot of these. I've used that milling machine, not one like that, but drills over there, lathes over there. And this bell has an inscription with lots of names on it, but it's from the company who sailed in the Ark in the years 1939 to 1941. To those this is the North American Harvard 3 two-seater advanced trainer. So being in the Navy was seen as a men's only profession, and so any ladies that got there, certainly in the early days, had to do it rather covertly and dressed up as men. So there were men actually, women dressed as men, and then women who helped along the way. Of course, now we do have ladies, and the Wrens have been around for quite a long time. Originally not at sea, so in total around 5,500 women joined the Wrens in the First World War. But not at sea, so they would be doing some of that engineering work where we've just seen in the workshop down there. Really beautiful memorial there to the Wrens. Played an important part in Bletchley Park where they helped with the decay of the Enigma machine. And you'll find one of these Enigma machines in Palma, in Portopee in fact, not the shopping centre but the museum of St. Bart's, just around the corner from the shopping centre. The Wrens, of course, being completely absorbed within the Navy now, and that's how Lara was when she joined the Navy just a few years ago. Actually, these ladies have got dolphins. It's very unusual because that's when ladies were going into the submarines. This level, we've got lots of memorabilia, lots of interesting things for us all to look at. More bells, ship's bells, levels, and the sort of kit that earlier we used to wear. helicopters don't come much simpler than this. It's basically a seat. Propellers up above. Where's the engine is the big question. So the answer is they don't have an engine. They're similar to gyrocopters. They are unpowered, and the rotors are just turned by the fact that they're moving forward. And these would be sort of like a glider, but in fact a cross between a glider and a helicopter, I suppose. But there's no engine involved. This is the Grumman Marklet, a powerful engine for its time, and employed by the Royal Navy as a fighter aircraft. KD 431. On this side we've got the Hellcat fighter bomber reconnaissance plane. And this is the Grumman Avenger, used from 1943 right up through to 1955. Just looking on this side, something that's just caught my eye, a wooden practice torpedo. This is described as the trailblazing Sea Vampire LZ551-G. HMS Ocean, 3rd of December 1945, Lieutenant Commander Eric Brown made the first ever jet aircraft landing onto an aircraft carrier in the Sea Vampire. You're now looking at the actual aircraft that made that historical landing. It's quite amazing. First jet aircraft to land on an aircraft carrier. This is another de Havilland Vampire. This is the T-22 then. You need to be careful which button you press there. What it says here, ejector seat. An observation area here where we can look at some current aircraft. Into one of the hangars here. Just along the way. Just told I couldn't video, so let's go to safe distance here. Here's the Hawker Sea Fury, the FB-11. So we're just boarding a helicopter. Very dark in here. So we've now walked through the Seaplanes helicopter and onto the decks below an aboard the aircraft carrier. The Aviation Sea
In November 1956, British and French forces landed in Egypt to restore international control over the Suez Canal and bring an end to the Suez Crisis. In the world's first helicopter-borne cyclone, all 150 Royal Marine commanders
might have to dock soon if an aircraft goes above my head. Phantom. Realise how much bigger that was, and the Harrier does look quite a bit bigger. The McDonnell Douglas Phantom, 1968 to 1978. Speeds of up to Mach 2.1. It's 1,386 miles an hour. Special because it had the ability to vertically take off and land. So aircraft carriers described as being a city at sea. There are ships with multiple decks, 12 decks. Of the Concorde, which was in service from 1955 to 79, and did visit Palma de Mallorca, and Denise and I visited the Concorde, being on board. I just come up now above the aircraft here, and we've just been through a video explaining to us what each of the roles and different parts of the aircraft carrier are very, very interesting. All really well done, as you'd expect from the Royal Navy. Let's get into FICO. This is where the airplanes are told exactly what to do. So this is control. A bit like the control tower that you might have at an airport. A very short runway. So deep below decks you'll find the control room with all the radar screens. And these will be looking out for enemy aircraft, other obstacles that might be in the air or on the sea, and enemy ships of course. So here's a refreshment room, a refreshment bar. You can have a cup of tea or make yourself some toast. So here's the briefing room where we've got the officers at the front there instructing the pilots on what's going to be like out there and about the mission that they're going to be doing. Here's the aircraft control room, the ACR, and this is where the aircraft are logged, so we know whether they're in, whether they're out, where they are, what they're doing, what status they're in. So we're now in the operations room, and you can see they've already got the headgear on, which is what you'd done if you're expecting some sort of emergency situation. And there's you've got the CO, the commanding officer, the captain in this case, of the aircraft carrier, who will be listening and giving out instructions to all the people around him who are giving him all the information. Rather cramped spaces, so here this is a two-berth cabin, home to whoever the sailors are, and somebody's probably going to be sleeping in one of them. Not sure whether they do hot bunking, but that's something I'm accustomed to or have been accustomed to in the past.
Carrier looked like. It's where the movement of the ship was controlled, its course and speed. In other words, this was the driving seat. You might expect to find the captain up here, but he spent as much time down in the operations room as you've already seen. Instead, the immediate responsibility for the ship's safety sat with the officer of the watch. He would normally work a 4-hour watch, and there would be around 4 qualified officers on board to take turns on the bridge. The other people up here would be the navigator, or his deputy, who work out the ship's course. There is also a yeoman, a leading hand, responsible for the advising on the movement of other ships and communicating with them. On a modern carrier, there would also be a quartermaster up here, responsible for actually driving the ship. Things are a bit different now. Not just a more functional uniform, but since 1990, an officer of the watch can be a woman, like me. For a fast-paced, hands-on job with about as much responsibility as anyone would want, being officer of the watch on an aircraft carrier is hard to beat.
And bringing it right up to date, here we have the 2 of the newest of the aircraft carrier carriers in the Royal Navy. So here we have a model of the HMS Queen Elizabeth class of aircraft carrier, the most modern aircraft carrier in the British Navy. These aircraft carriers are 3 times bigger than the previous aircraft carriers, the Invincible, Illustrious and the Ark. We're now in the 4th hall, and an interesting aeroplane that we're greeted with, which is the Handley Page 115. And interesting in that it was designed to investigate low-speed flight of a jet engine, not particularly with the military or the Royal Navy in mind, but with Concorde in mind. And there is Concorde, a Concorde, and hopefully we'll be able to have a look inside. There's not a lot of space inside these aeroplanes. They were rather cramped, but very, very fast. So we're now at the rear of the Concorde, and these are the rear steps to enter the aircraft. On either side we've got the engines, which is where the piece of metal flew up and caused the disastrous flight many years ago now. Right, we'll go up the steps and see if I can squeeze through this Concorde. It's a mind your head job, this is. Concorde was never a very big aircraft. This one's kitted out for research rather than for seats for passengers. So we've got all the kit here, which we're using to check. But can I stand up? Just my head touches the top. Get a feel of what it looked like. 2 seats on each side. A little bit of luxury, but not much space. And here we've got all of the testing equipment.
The windows work. Alright, yeah. Lucas, like, how do you know her? Oh, football. Oh, yeah.
Very narrow, didn't carry a lot of passengers compared with modern planes, but what it did do was speed, which has never been matched by any other aircraft. There's the oxygen cylinders and the dials. That's the way out, and maybe hopefully get into the cockpit in a moment. It looks like I've got a parachute there, I'm not sure. In-flight escape hatch. I fancy that. Just heading up into the cockpit, and it is a bit of a squeeze. So just give you a quick look, because there are lots of people waiting to come and have a look inside the cockpit of this, and that's what the pilot and the co-pilot would face at takeoff and landing, all the dials and knobs and levers they've got to keep an eye on, and then more and more back here as well. And there's the famous nose cone, which has to bend down so that the pilots can actually see where they're going, what they're doing. And another Harrier. Something about the Harrier, I don't know, it's probably my age that makes it feel like the best aircraft that was ever built. We'll have to see what the F-35 comes out like. There's the Concorde. I was lucky enough a few years ago to come to a lecture here in this hall by one of the test pilots who was telling us about his experience as a test pilot on Concorde way back in I suppose in the 1960s. And the lecture was given and we were seated underneath the wing, which is quite an apt place to have the lecture. Interesting. Nice view of the Concorde there. Sad that we don't actually have an aircraft of its calibre today. It's often talked about. You see it in the news quite often that we're going to have a new supersonic passenger aircraft. It's not happened yet. The Russians did actually try to develop one very similar at the time. It was actually referred to as the Concordski, but it crashed at an air show and never continued. Concorde during its time though was successful, and that one crash meant it came to an end. Bristol Scout, just flying over effectively the Concorde below. So, pioneering prototypes of the future.
The single-seat Bristol Scout, which was used for the Royal Aviation in World War I, is typical of aircraft construction at that time.
The Westland Sea King has been in service with the Royal Navy for many years, one that actually Lara went on a number of times, I think, when she was in the Navy. This one with an extremely pointed front is the Fairy delta-winged aircraft. One last look at the Concorde as I just try and get the whole aircraft in the frame. I don't think I'm quite there, but nearly. Magnificent aircraft. And I videoed this particular aircraft at the beginning. I forgot to mention the rockets that are attached there. Somebody actually climb out on the wing and light the fuse. Well, there are the prices for the Fleet Air Arm Museum. It does actually include a whole year, I believe, and it is cheaper if you buy it online, and we actually got to the top of the steps and booked it online, so you can leave it as late as you like. Well, we just had a fun time at the Fleet Air Arm Museum, and Luna says bye-bye.
What did you do in there? What did you do?
Saw lots of aeroplanes, didn't we? And helicopters. Really interesting, fascinating place, and somewhere you can spend hours upon hours and come again and see different things. Well worth a visit. Thanks very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye, Savannah.
Bye bye. Bye bye.